I've talked to a ton of game repair shops. It's very, very unlikely. You're killing your PlayStation 5! Hello and welcome back to Gears and Tech. I know that was a little bit dramatic of an opening scene, but recent news have been coming out and people are talking a lot about the fact that storing your PlayStation 5 in this vertical position, just like this, is actually killing it. Now, I'm not the first person to talk about this, but hopefully I will cover a few things that the other guys aren't talking about because I have a little bit of a pretty good understanding about how this system works, especially around the heating and the cooling and all of that. And if you watch all the way to the end, I do have a secret tip where I will tell you if you're worried about your PlayStation 5 and if you're not sure if yours is at risk of being damaged, I will tell you how to test if there's any problems with your PlayStation 5. We're gonna cover it. We're gonna tell you so you can put your mind at ease if you've wrecked it or if it's gonna get wrecked. We'll tell you. We're gonna cover all that. We'll get there, okay? But first, we need to talk about what the problem is so that everyone understands what we're talking about. This might be the first time that you've heard about this. So here's the deal. On the internet, some people released some pictures of PlayStation 5s that allegedly were in the upright stored position and never turned on. And as soon as it was pulled out of the box and set up, it immediately started to have problems of overheating. Now, the article where it discusses that was actually later adjusted to say, actually, no, the system wasn't just standing there in the box. It was actually unpacked and it was used. It was turned on and it was running in the vertical position just like this. And through the process of warming up and heating up, all of the liquid metal inside oozed out and then the console died. And when it was pulled apart, it was found that the liquid metal had leaked everywhere, and that's why the console died. Before we get too far into this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel down below. If you've seen some of our content already and have not subscribed, we want you to join our community. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and let's get back to the video. We need to talk about the liquid metal in the first place. Why is there liquid metal in there? And I know some of you are like thinking about Terminator 2 and this guy like coming through the cell bars trying to get to you. That kind of liquid metal. Well, that's actually inside the PlayStation 5. That's not a rumor, that's for real. So here's the deal. There's a few different ways to cool a computer processor or a GPU or whatever. Now to help illustrate this, I'm going to use this, which is a all-in-one water cooler out of my old computer behind me there. Now this part right here, this is a copper heatsink that would sit on top of your processor or your GPU or your whatever. The problem is the surface of this is not perfectly smooth, and the surface of the chip is also not perfectly smooth. They are polished to be as smooth as possible, but there's still micro channels and micro holes that are in there. Those of you who are not aware, air is a very good insulator. So if we end up with an air gap between the cooling surface of the cooler and the chip that we're trying to cool, the heat won't transfer from one to the other as nicely as you would like. So we use something like thermal paste. So most PC builders and game companies use thermal paste. Now this is just a little tube of some paste, obviously thermal paste, which you ooze all over this heat transfer surface. And then when you stick it on the processor, it allows the heat to transfer from the processor to our cooler much more easily. And that's been good enough until recently when Sony said, we're gonna take cooling very, very seriously. If you have a PlayStation 4 Pro, you have no doubt heard the jet engine fans that are required to keep that thing cool. Now there's a two-part reason for that. Number one, they're small fans. Small fans make a lot of noise. And number two is that the thermal paste was maybe not applied quite perfectly, which means that the system is prone to overheating or at least getting really warm, and those fans have to work extra hard in order to cool that processor. So Sony, not messing around, said, what is the best way that we can transfer the heat from this chip to the cooler? And somebody said, liquid metal. Now, liquid metal is not a new substance to use. In fact, Sony's not the first ones to use it. The PC builders have had access to liquid metal for a long time. The problem with liquid metal is that it's very messy. Like, it's really messy to use. And I'll show you guys some videos of people applying liquid metal to a PlayStation 5 processor so you can see, because it's a messy process. Plus, if it's not managed properly and it is allowed to leak out, liquid metal is just that. It's metal. It actually is a conductor. So when you've got very, very fine circuit boards, you got fine solder joints, the liquid metal could bridge your contacts between some of those points on the board, and it will actually make it fail. Essentially, it will break your unit depending on which bridges that you create on the solder joints. So it's a very high risk stakes here. But Sony, they're not dumb. They spent a lot of time trying to build the perfect best way to keep that liquid metal secure inside there. So here's a good video of what that liquid metal looks like. You'll notice that there's actually a little gasket around here so that it keeps the liquid metal where you're supposed to have it. But if it managed to escape there for whatever reason, they added this foam pad, and the foam pad is designed to absorb all of the liquid metal so none makes it out. Now, it is very, very difficult to remove that gasket and that foam pad. So the chances of the liquid metal leaking out of that are very, very, very slim. But if it did happen to make it out, the foam pad would capture it all and it shouldn't leak anywhere. So a lot of the videos that you're seeing online of people showing pictures of that liquid metal oozing out, it would appear that the PlayStation had been sitting in this configuration because you can see the liquid metal kind of oozing down. And that's made people really start to worry. Is my system doing the same thing? Has some of the liquid metal oozed out? And is my system at risk of overheating, and or am I gonna get some of that liquid metal on my circuit board and short out my entire system? Now, some people have suggested that the fix for having this stuff ooze out all over the place is to do this. Okay, you ready for it? Here's the fix. Run the PlayStation like this for a couple months. Because, I mean, naturally, if the liquid metal's oozing out the bottom, you flip it upside down, now the bottom's the top, so it'll ooze back down into the top. And then, after you get it, you know, to where you think it might be back where it's supposed to be, then you set your system like this and use it flat all the time, because then the liquid metal is going to just level set inside there and it'll fill in all the cracks and it'll be beautiful. You will have fixed your system and you will have saved yourself from wrecking it. Now, first of all, I want to debunk that, okay? Right off the bat, I've talked to a ton of game repair shops who have pulled apart PlayStation 5s and have done all kinds of repairs for all kinds of reasons. And they all say the same thing. The odds of seeing a scenario where that liquid metal is actually oozing out past that gasket that we just saw is like zero. The chance is 0%. If you look at YouTubers such as Tronix Fix, he's pulled a ton of PlayStation 5s apart. And in most cases, the liquid metal is still intact until he breaks that seal, pulls it apart, and then obviously you will create a mess, and it's a huge mess. And as long as the system's not powered on, you can make that mess, clean it all back up, reapply your thermal paste if that's what you want to do, or your liquid metal if that's what you prefer to do. But if you don't replace that gasket, or you don't put a brand new gasket in, you have a very, 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 very high risk of having that gasket not sealing as perfect as what it should. And that is when you're at risk of having a system standing up where that liquid metal will leak out. And that is the only way. Now, I know there are other stories of people saying, well, I've dropped the PlayStation and that did it. Again, it's very, very unlikely. If you see how hard it is to separate that gasket from the system, it is like impossible. And that's when we're trying to remove it. Dropping it on the ground is not going to break that seal. But I did tell you guys that I have a way for you to test if you are at risk. And it's gonna sound so basic. You're gonna be like, holy, I don't believe that I watched all the way this far in the video just to be told what you just said. But I'm gonna tell you anyway. You remember the PlayStation 4 Pro where I said that the fans spin up really high when it's trying to cool? Well, it turns out the PlayStation 5 actually has a temperature probe on the chip. It knows how hot the processor is. It knows how hot the GPU is. It knows how hot the system is. And it adjusts the fan speed based on how hot the system is. So if you had been using it in this configuration and some of your liquid metal had oozed out for whatever reason, you would start to see dry spots on the processor. Dry spots are areas where the heat transfer is not happening anymore, and the chip would start to develop hotspots. As the chip develops hotspots, it will send that information to the main processor, which will say, oh, this is getting a little bit too warm, and it'll turn the fan up, and it'll turn the fan up more, and it'll turn the fan up more, until the fan is going at full speed. If the fan on the PlayStation 5 is going full speed, it will not sound like a jet engine like the PlayStation 4 Pro. So don't be listening for a jet engine. But what you should notice is significantly more noise from your PlayStation. If you're not sure, you could also hold a piece of toilet paper to the back of the PlayStation and just watch it flap in the wind. If it's flapping more than normal, which I guess you don't know how much normal is, but if it's flapping a lot, then your fan's running higher. Also, this system will downclock your processor to try to, again, save heat. It's trying to lower the heat threshold. So if it's throttling the processor, what you would notice is significant slowdowns on screen. So when you're playing your game and you've got it set to high visual resolution and you've got it set to high frame rates and you're really pushing it really hard, if you start noticing a lot of stuttering and then maybe even eventually the system shuts down, you definitely have a cooling issue. If you experience just the stuttering, you might have a cooling issue, or you might have a crappily coded game which has slowdowns, because I've noticed that especially Call of Duty has slowdowns already. If you're really worried about it, you can start today by lying your system down and gaming with it lying down. Personally, I've been gaming with mine lying down its entire life. I'm not worried at all. If I had stood it up, if it was running in the standing up position, I would still not be worried, because all the research that I have done points to the fact that 99.999% of the PlayStations would work just fine and not have this problem. They have sold over 30 million PlayStation 5s. If this was a big deal, you would see people coming forward saying, hey, it happened to me. Not just one or two random internet strangers who said, hey, this could happen. So I'm here to put your mind at ease. It's not happening to your system. If you think it is, pay attention to the fan speed, pay attention to the graphics if they're stuttering or slowing down, and then, and only then, should you look at potentially taking some drastic measures. The first thing I would do is lie my system down and continue doing my thing. That's what I would do. That's my recommendation. Now, I just don't want you guys to get all too excited. Everyone's hyping this up because they all want the clicks. I debated not doing this video, but I really think that level heads need to prevail here. We don't need to panic. There's nothing to panic about. Your PlayStation's fine, the system's okay, and the PlayStation 5 Slim is on the way. It probably won't even have liquid metal anyway. That's my prediction. Hey, thanks for watching all the way to the end of this video. We hope you enjoy the content in this video, and we'd love to have you come back. Consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. And for those subscribers who are looking for that extra special thing that you can do to support this channel, consider joining our members group. That's where we're building this community, the Gears and Tech community, where we can all enjoy content together. you'll get special perks, which we'd love for you to check out by clicking the link down below. For those of you who are just happy to watch the video, that's okay too. You can check out some of our other content right over here, where we've got some previous videos that have already been uploaded and enjoyed by many of our viewers already. We do hope to see you again. This has been Gears and Tech. Have a great day.